Just disclosure, if anyone doesn't want to be recorded, then of course you have the option to be able to drop off. Um, so good evening, good afternoon. My name is Maria Mason. I'm going to be instructing today's class as well as Wednesday's class. Some of you may already know me from being in my mentee group, but a little bit about myself. I've been working for the company for 15 years. And in my current role, I work in the customer care group, the direct facing customer group, where I lead a team of project managers to help deploy systems, tools, processes, and things like that to the front line. So I went through this exact same course the end of 2022 to the beginning of 2023, and I took my PMP certification in April of 2023 and passed. And so I did mentor and co-lead after that. And then I'm mentoring again this session, and this will be my first session as an independent instructor. So we'll be learning a little bit together, but that's it about me. Any questions before we get into the content? I know we have quite a few slides to go through today. Awesome. So this section, lesson 4, is broken up over 3 days. So we'll cover 2/3 of it between today and Wednesday. And then Harry is teaching the class on Monday that will close out this session for us. And so let's go through. So here are our learning objectives for lesson 4. Discuss the guidelines for developing leadership competencies and skills, describe artifacts and the strategies for their use, identify the characteristics and core functions of empowered teams, explain strategies and forms of communication for collaborating in a project team environment, learn the value of training, coaching, and mentoring for a team, explain the importance of conflict management, and discuss the causes and levels of conflict and their outcomes. And if you guys put a question in there, you'll have to tell me because I don't have the ability to see the questions in the chat while I'm sharing my screen. So first topic is around crafting your leadership skills. Teams are made up of individuals of different skill sets, backgrounds, experiences, and attitudes. Cohesive, collaborative teams typically are productive and effective. Leadership is a trait required of everyone on the project team. And so if you're the project manager or the team lead, then you also need to lead on leadership. So this topic here corresponds to the people domain of the ECO, the ECHO, and the power skills side of the PMI talent triangle. So let's talk about the evolving role of project professionals as collaborative leaders, innovators, and change makers. These are the essential power skills required to lead teams and individuals and secure desired outcomes. So, project professionals use interpersonal power skills, including collaborative leadership, communication, and innovative mindset for purpose orientation and empathy. Teams with these skills can maintain influence with a variety of stakeholders, a critical component for making change. This is arguably the most important skill to leading a team is being able to have those interpersonal skills. So, some general guidelines to develop leadership competencies include tailoring your leadership style to the project, using emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills to lead with empathy, be mindful of individual and team aims and working relationships. Cultural and diversity aspects are important elements in implementing effective leadership modes. But also look at more kinds of diversity like differing motivations and working styles of individuals and groups, which can vary greatly based on their experiences, age, culture, job roles, and many more influences. And so you really want to focus on creating a psychologically safe environment so that the team members feel empowered. This takes transparency to another level. So Communication and openness to learn from others builds trust and improves the optimal options to lead various team members and stakeholders. So remember this for when you guys take the test, that when you may see examples of questions around conflict, that you don't think about necessarily how you've handled things in the past or how you would handle things at your job today. Think about best case scenario and the best environment ever, and what would that team look like, and how would you handle it in those situations. So, as a project professional, you must possess and apply leadership skills that enable a good working environment and guide your project team towards accomplishing the desired result. This requires a balance of ethical, interpersonal, and conceptual skills that help you analyze situations and interact appropriately. Project managers work and communicate with several different people throughout the life cycle of a project, so having strong people and leadership skills is crucial. Depending on the project professional's personality and a project's environment, the leadership style that is used can vary from a servant leadership style to a more direct approach. So we'll learn more about the skills and competencies in the lesson, but um, the ones that are important: communication, conflict management, critical thinking, cultural awareness, decision making, emotional intelligence, ethical approach, expert judgment, facilitation, meeting management, negotiation, networking, and team building. So, emotional intelligence belongs to the larger set of interpersonal and team skills a project leader is expected to have. So if you look at the skills quickly, you'd have active listening, communication styles assessment, emotional intelligence, influencing, motivation, nominal group technique, political awareness, and transparency. And then here are two of the words, the definitions to kind of look out for and make note of. Active listening, a communication technique that involves acknowledging the speaker's message and the recipient clarifying the message to confirm that what was heard matches the message that the sender intended. Very important. And then communication styles assessment. That's a technique to identify the preferred communication method, format, and content for stakeholders for planned communication activities. Leadership styles. So, different from skills, these are the styles that leaders need to be able to use in different environments. You should know a few of these and learn the differences between them. But on the job, the foremost requirement is to be able to adapt and tailor your leadership style to the situation. So, you do want to factor in your own style, the team style, and then the organization's experience with the type of project. For example, is it a new project or do you need a new development approach? So you want to assess your team's maturity, experience levels, team working experience, personality types, and combinations. They're all factors in determining the appropriate styles to employ. The governance structure of your organization will influence your leadership style. So this reflects the influence of organizational culture. Finally, where are your team members located physically, and how can you enable them to work at their very best under potentially challenging conditions? And so you may see a question or two on the test that specifically talks about strain that the team is experiencing because they're not cohabitated or co-located. And so it's going to ask you, like, what are some ideas or things that you can do to try to improve that team's dynamic? So we have 5 different styles here. I'd prefer if someone from the team, from the group, would mind maybe reading off these different styles for us, so I'm not just talking for 90 minutes straight. Can be anybody, or I can just randomly call on people.
Direct style. Hierarchical with project manager making all decisions. Consultative, leader factors in opinions but makes the decisions. Servant leadership, leader models desired behaviors. Consensus or collaborative, team operates autonomously. And situational, style changes to fit the context and maturity or experience of the team.
Thank you so much. So you may see situational question or two that ask like which style should this leader enact based on this type of situation. And so you'll want to just be familiar with the different styles and kind of think through which one would be most applicable in whatever situational question they may show up. Leadership does not equal management. You must do both. So, management by objectives and emotional intelligence are covered in the next topic coming up. But leadership refers to guiding the team by using discussion and an exchange of ideas, where management refers to directing the actions using a prescribed set of behaviors. So, not all team members and other stakeholders are motivated and inspired the same way. So you need to recognize and act upon the most suitable and reasonable approach to lead the project team. Whether that approach is to take charge or quietly work behind the scenes, a project manager must adapt leadership style to the situation and the stakeholders. So this demands awareness of individual and team aims, as well as working relationships, also known as emotional intelligence. So you're juggling a bunch of different people and a bunch of different needs. And you, as the project leader, has to figure out how to bring it all together for a successful project. Servant leadership. Um, this is a key concept. Service to the team through addressing needs and development of team members. So rather than manage projects and teams, trying to keep the project on plan and the team in line, servant leaders help teams develop and grow as a group and as individuals. Servant leaders facilitate the team's work by providing coaching and training, removing blocks that impede work progress, either from people or processes, and focus on team accomplishments rather than the team misfires. So, to help reflect this change in orientation, many organizations use the term project leader, for example, rather than project manager. Servant leadership means leading by supporting the team and addressing their needs. The style aims to understand the team's needs and take action to enable the team to perform and deliver. Support the team with a conducive environment and lead with communication by removing distractions or roadblocks. You are working for the team. Therefore, you must focus on their needs. Being a servant leader requires skills such as active listening, coaching awareness, and facilitation. It is used in agile and other types of projects. It encourages the self definition and self discovery and self awareness of team members by listening, coaching, and providing an environment that allows them to grow. Very often, this will be the preferred method of leadership. So make sure you are very, very familiar with servant leadership, what it means, what it would look like in a specific situation, if that's the leadership skill that needs to be implemented. Adopt a growth mindset. So, considering the status quo can open new ideas and perspectives, challenging the way things were done or are being done at the present time. It assures all involved that this is the best approach and the best product. And it also breaks complacency and blind acceptance. Think about encouraging healthy skepticism on all aspects of the project, and its vision helps stakeholders not overlook anything and assume too much. Introspection is an examination of one's own mental and emotional state. So you want to just keep a growth mindset at all times. okay to lean back on past experiences and processes, but you've got to be willing to continuously improve and learn. So, growth mindset, as conceived by Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck and colleagues, is the belief that a person's capabilities and talents can be improved over time. Very important. Team building. Team building is crucial to ensuring that the team functions in a cohesive manner, working together in the same direction. So, this aspect is a critical component of leading a successful team. Team building activities unify, working collaboratively towards a shared goal is a great way for team members to help each other reach a higher level of performance. Team building activities are the specific functions or actions taken to help the team to develop them into a mature, productive team. They can be formal or informal, brief or extended, and facilitated by the project manager or a group facilitator. So, can someone share for me an example of a positive team building experience that they've had in the past? It can be within the company, it can be outside the company, just any experiences that you may have that, about around positive team building.
My team used to do, when we also worked together, virtual team happy hours once a month for like an hour and a half. And we couldn't talk about work.
That's a really good one. I did one on an old team that I was on, and the activity, everybody had to send in a picture of their refrigerator. And then what we spent that happy hour doing was trying to guess whose refrigerator was who. It was hilarious. It was such a cool activity. And it's not something that you would organically bring work into. So it was really good. Yeah, that's a good one. Anybody else have any positive team building experiences they'd like to share?
I was on a team and we used to share pictures before we started any meeting of life events and what was going on in our lives. So if you had, birthdays or vacation or traveling, so we would all share, just it was a way to keep in touch and learn and grow together, even though we all were scattered across the United States.
I think that's a great one too, because I think sometimes, particularly when we get super busy, we just look at everybody as what we need in that moment and not like the person that they are. And so I
Right.
think to some degree that allows us to just humanize and strengthen the team bonds so that when I look at you, I'm thinking about, oh, yeah, she loves to go out whitewater rafting. And like, that's a cool memory that I think instead of just laser focused on what I need from you at that very moment, and that's it. So I think that's a really good
Correct.
example.
Thanks.
Anybody else have another example they wanted to share about team building at all?
our our team is pretty much all over the US, and we used to bring in whenever we would get on the call, our manager would give us a letter, and you have 60 seconds to find an item within your vicinity, starting with that letter. So it was just kind of fun because we were all on camera. So it got to be a kind of competitive thing where who could find the craziest thing to bring on with whatever the letter of the day is. So
That's a really fun example. And we did that on our team before. We did a virtual scavenger hunt, and it was like a list of all these things, and everybody had like, I don't know, 90 seconds. And then you all had to run and grab all these items in your house and then come back and then show the items. And then whoever had gotten the most items from the scavenger hunt won. And it was like some of the most random things that you had to grab. But it was like super cool. It was really fun. And so, and then if you guys were doing it repetitively, it was something you kind of looked forward to, which is good sometimes going into team meetings to kind of have something to look forward to, a positive aspect.
some letters are easier than others, but it was fun.
I bet. I bet.
I've set up for all those like letter writing, bridge to possibility things. I've set up like 30 minutes for my team to hang out and write letters together and just visit.
That's super nice. Donating your time for a good cause and then also double dipping by getting some good team building in at the same time. That's a really good example. I like it. All right. So, Tuckman stages of team development. I'm sure most of you have seen these before on the Tuckman's ladder. So, these are the stages of team development. During a project, teams can get stuck in a particular stage or even revert back to an earlier one. So it's especially likely after a disruption, maybe a new team member coming on or a team member leaving, or perhaps a change or shift in roles. And so you want to remember to ensure that the team gets through the storming phase as quickly as possible. But you have your forming, your storming, your norming, your performing, which is like the funnest part, and then your adjourning, which is when we're kind of signing off and moving to the next project or assigned task. You may see this on the test, maybe something along the lines of saying like, this is what's going on. Which stage on Tuckman's ladder is this team in? And you'll have to think through which of the options it is. So it's important to provide a positive environment where team members feel a sense of value and are empowered to contribute to the overall success of the project. But you do need to also help your team cultivate and establish a sense of urgency to be able to provide their best work in the shortest amount of time. So, how do we do this? The key is balance and consistency, motivation, and emphasizing that sense of shared understanding of the value of the project. So, you as the leader need to ensure that the team knows the value of the project to the organization and how this project helps achieve its strategic vision. That will help the team feel motivated that their work is making a direct and positive impact on the organization. So, this includes leading the team through the communication of the project's importance and vision and showing the team why the project matters, creating relevancy and reinforcement of the value. So, again, when you take your PMP certification test, you're in best world scenario, best case scenario, right? And so, this is how you lead your teams. Don't think through the lens of what you've experienced, either being on a team or potentially leading a team since you've been here. But in this world, in PMP certification world, and ideally, as you grow as a leader, even within the company or whatever company you choose to go to, this is how you want to look through the lens. You want to be able to have a great tone, but also balance that with the urgency of the project and getting it completed. Virtual team member engagement, right? So we talked a lot about some of the team building practices with virtual teams, particular. So managing engagement with a virtual team requires persistence and a focus on good team dynamics, especially transparency, accountability, and active attention to effective communications. So teams communicate better face to face, and there's lots of evidence of the criticality of being able to assess body language and tone of voice to ensure that team members have brought into the approaches that they're using to solve problems. So you want to make sure that you are using and adapting video conference tools. You're checking for active participation and engagement. And then you want to use tools that may help with visualization, for example, like Kanban style boards. And so, again, you may get a question on a test that says, like, this group is struggling. And one of the options may be to allow them to co work. And so, if that's an option based on the scenario, it's probably the best option when it's available. Of course, if one person is in Washington State and one person is in Washington, D.C., then that's not a situation where you could be like, I'm going to make them co locate. But if it's a situation where they can, particularly if the team's experiencing some type of strife, think about how can you co-locate. If you can't, think about what options you're being provided to help the team bond and improve communication. Virtual team best practices. You want to manage the risk of feeling isolated. Focus on shared commitments and team goals versus the individual accomplishments, and it's still a sense of shared commitment to the project. So maybe start with the team charter, adopt behaviors to reinforce collaboration and promote visibility, enable teams to self-organize and be accountable for deliverables, and use appropriate tools like shared calendars to plan meetings, coordinate feedback, and improve visibility to goals and activity status. So you got to think through how can you keep everybody looped in and engaged for the duration of the project. So we've covered these topics from the ECO in this lesson, talked about leading a team. You want to value servant leadership, relate to the tenets of servant leadership to the team, determine an appropriate leadership style, distinguish various options to lead team members and stakeholders, and engage and support virtual teams. You want to implement options for virtual team member engagement. So, questions about this ECO, leading a team, or what we covered about engaging and supporting virtual teams, because we're going to go now to a different topic around collaboration. All right, well, we're just rolling right on along then. Create a collaborative project team environment. So we just talked about leading the people in your project. Now let's talk about best practices for ensuring that the work can actually happen smoothly. So some of the stuff we'll cover is creating a structure for physical and virtual working, including workspace management, project artifact and documentation creation, and configuration management. Where and how the team works. Well, there it is. I just said it. Co-location, if possible, is best. So the environment and location of a project team are extremely important elements to leading and managing projects. Your team needs to be able to contribute everywhere and at any time. Setting up the physical environment supports the whole team engagement. If the team feels engaged and involved, their interactions will be more meaningful. Give people autonomy in their work so they're empowered to take initiative when they need to. Your KPIs will help you detect and monitor subpar performance easily, right? So give people the benefit of the doubt unless you see through metrics and observation that someone's not performing up to standard and may need more guidance. These are all things to think about as you see situational questions about how to get your team when they're working back on track, or how to optimize the team, or how to deal with something that may come up on the team that throws the team off, or if the team's stuck. These are some of the things to consider. Agile space for hybrid teams. Co-locating all involved in a shared workspace fosters more informal and immediate collaboration and exchange of information. Ensure private spaces for those who need to work in solitude. Even the passive information that's absorbed from the surroundings, like ad hoc discussions, side conversations, whiteboard drawings, and physical body language, can have value. Being immersed in the team physically and mentally improves the team's ability to work faster, more collaboratively, and in a more unified way. So in agile projects, meaningful interaction is a core tenet. To encourage frequent, free-flowing interaction, the team structure and workspaces must be conducive. So this mostly applies to hybrid teams. So have a little thing here. Transparency. One of the three pillars of the empirical process, which is transparency, inspection, and adaptability, that promotes real-time accurate progress on every aspect of the project. Transparency is very, very important, particularly in the Agile framework. Work information management systems. You want to use a PMIS to conduct work and share information. So project management information system. Some examples could be Microsoft Project, also Jira, maybe one that you're familiar with. I used to use Asana and a couple roles ago, but those are just different types of project management information systems. But you want to make sure that you're using something to conduct all your work and to be able to share information. And then likewise, you want to use a sharing platform to store and maintain your project artifacts. Some examples could be Microsoft SharePoint or Teams, Google Drives, just somewhere to be able to store all of your information that people can access as a team. Project artifacts. Artifacts are like historical artifacts and that they can show us what work was done and how it was done. It's a historical repository that can be useful for future projects. So your work will largely be creating and maintaining these key pieces of work. Any documentation, plan, or item that could be used to reconstruct the history of the project or product, especially when changes were made, should be maintained and archived once the project is complete. So you've got to have some type of repository for people to be able to go back and review. Information storage and distribution good practices. So here are a couple of good practices for storage and distribution of artifacts. You want to store your artifacts in an accessible location. You want to use a storage and distribution center that matches the complexity of the project. Use cloud-based document storage and retrieval systems for larger projects, especially if team members are geographically distributed. Standalone artifacts. You want to include as much as possible. Try to standardize an approach to artifact management. Here's a couple of helpful guidelines for good practices, but you want to have a simple method of producing and controlling documents. You want organizations to have templates and a style sheet to standardize communication, right? Use a structured process for reviewing and approving documents and discuss and implement version control and security. So these are things you need to standardize early on so that once you have a system in place, you're not taking up a bunch of time later on trying to find where did the documents go? How do I categorize them? What templates should I use? Who needs to have access to it? These are things that you want to make sure that you have a process in place for upfront. Tailoring your artifacts. The project manager and or team selects and adapts the appropriate artifacts for use on their specific project. You want to tailor them to the unique needs of the project. Not every process, input, tool, technique, or output is required on every project. These lists can be considered typical, but not exclusive. Artifacts typical of predictive include project charters, change requests, and baselines. So you see listed here all of the different types of things that you may want to use depending as artifacts, depending on what your project is like. Are these things that you're going to need to use? If you're not launching a product, then you probably don't need a product backlog, for example. Maintaining artifacts. Some projects use a configuration management system to track project artifacts and monitor and control changes to them. The configuration management plan describes how the information about the items of the project and which items will be recorded and updated so that the product, service, or result of the project remains consistent and or operative. So you do want to look out for configuration management system, which is how a project manager tracks project artifacts and monitors and controls changes to them. So configuration management plan, a component of the project management plan. So thinking about all of the different groups and guides, this goes under where the project management plan is when you're creating your project management plan. It describes how to identify and account for project artifacts under configuration control and how to record and report changes to them. And the definition for configuration management system, a collection of procedures used to track project artifacts and monitor and control changes to those artifacts. Version control. Each time a file is updated, give it a new version number. So this is a subset of configuration management related to documents and digital record keeping. So whenever you update a file, it needs to get a new version number. Include a date timestamp and the name of the user who made the changes, because that's you providing like a digital paper trail of the document's history. Use version control for important artifacts like subsidiary project management plans, scope, and other documents. So you don't want to have someone going in and just randomly making changes. You want to be able to have a paper trail of who's making the changes and when. Version control, a system that records changes to a file in a way that allows users to retrieve previous changes made to it. So we talked about in this section, managing project artifacts. You want to be able to determine the requirements for managing the project artifacts, and you want to validate that the information is kept up to date and is accessible to all stakeholders. So we're like way ahead of the class. So what questions do you guys have for me? Because technically this is my last slide for this lesson. Okay, so just no questions about anything? Were y'all listening the whole class or were y'all multitasking? Because I sure did multitask when I took the class and that was not good for me. So you guys tell me, are you good to go with the stuff that we covered? I know we covered a lot of stuff to take in.
What kind of questions might they have related to document, I guess numbering your documents or making sure that you have new versions?
The questions are going to all be situational, right? So it's going to probably say something like the scope, a change in scope was just discovered and needs to be updated. What do you need to do next, right? Or it may say something like a member of your team needs to update the scope. They're going to the repository to make the update. What should they do next? Right. And it may say stuff like update the document. And then it may say ensure that it's date stamped. It may say just tell the stakeholders that about the change without formally updating it. And it may say something like make sure it's updated before the end of the project. Right. So it's going to be like 2 questions that you know is wrong. And there's going to be 2 that you're not sure. But like you're going to want to make sure the one you hone in on is the one where they're making the update, they're doing the date and time stamp, they're putting their name, right? Because it could be right to just say, oh, they're going to update it, make sure they update it within the next week, right? And the other one may say, make sure they're updating it immediately, right? Updating it next week still gets it updated, right? But the next best thing will be updating it immediately, for example. So it's just knowing which one is the best choice to do in that situation. And so that would be an example of where they're looking to make sure that you're doing it promptly, that you're using the PMIS to do it instead of just sending an email, right, to the stakeholders or sending an email to the team. Like just thinking about what's the procedure. Or it may say, like, what part of the process are you in? You know, if they're going to make this update to the scope of the project, for example, or a document that's in the artifact. And then you'll need to visualize what header or what part of the project requires you to go in and update the artifacts repository. Where does that belong?
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. What else?
So I
Okay.
think I'm hearing just one more. I'm sorry. I think
Yeah,
what I'm
go ahead.
hearing,
No.
yeah, what I'm hearing kind of over and over again is like there's the PMI world, and then there's, this is my opinion, the real world. But when it comes to answering the questions based on what you just said, it sounds like the best answers are going to be what would the PMI world say, um, whether or not one is acceptable, what's the best PMI answer? Is that, I think that's kind of the theme I'm picking up from a few different people. Is that correct?
It's the best answer in the most ideal world ever.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
the part that you need. It's the world where you have access to everything you ever need
Yeah.
and people who love to just do the work. And even when they get off track, they really want to get back on track. They just need your guidance and direction on how to do it. And you want to
Mhm.
be careful because there will be many questions where two answers are right, but the key word is what do you do next or what do you do first, right? And so they could both be actions that you do, but they may not necessarily be the next
Mhm.
action. So it's
Got
just
it.
making sure that you have the processes visualized in your head on where you at in the project and what would be the next step.
Mhm. Cool. Thank you. That was
Sure.
it.
Okay, well, I'll hang on here for another 10 minutes or so at least because we technically have quite a bit more class time available in case anybody has any other questions, or if you think about any other questions, then you're more than welcome to put them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them. All right, have a good one. Y'all can go. If y'all want to hang out
Thank
with
you.
me, I'll be here.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
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 Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.